Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. It's a gloomy Tuesday, and we're gonna have an irregular show today, but nonetheless a fun one. With me today, I have a good friend of mine, Greg Levenhagen, 12 Hagen, 13 Hagen. Take that off your head. Who are you, sir?
Um, I'm a principal consultant with Skyline Technologies, one of the core people for that conference. Been with it since the start. Um, get a couple honorary or whatever recognition type titles with Microsoft Regional Director and Microsoft MVP in Windows development. And live in Appleton, Wisconsin, so the northern part of the state. Represented that conference from the north. And I don't know, here to chat about all things, whatever Clark and I are up to today.
Yeah, so we had a bit of a scheduling snafu today, and um, and so rather than sitting here and like I don't know, it's late in the day. I didn't really want to think too much. I figured we would just sit here and riff about gadgets, libraries, cool tech, whatever that we have sitting around our cribs. And so I don't know. I don't know if we call this the unshow or the link bait show or whatever. But I got a whole bunch of cool stuff, and you do. So let's talk about our cool shit.
So one of the first things I want to chat about, just was doing some stuff with Raspberry Pis.
Did
I
you
don't
get
have
the
my,
new one?
I did not get the new one yet, and I'm also looking forward to getting my hands on some of the particle devices that I don't yet. But I've been having this work with a robotic arm, and for those that don't know, it's not too bad to buy a little, they call it like a servo hat. So you just have to take these little plug-in things.
Yep.
They're three sets of what is it? One, two, three, four sets of three. Plug it in there, and then the idea here, which I have working in prototype but won't be able to easily demo here, is I have a leap motion, and so running on the Mac, the leap motion stuff runs through a Python script that goes up to AWS Lambda and some of the AWS IoT stuff. And then that comes down to the Raspberry Pi, which also has some Python running on it. And then that will mimic your hand movements along with whatever you're for the robot here.
Oh,
So
that's
then
cool.
this thing can rotate side to side, up and down. And now it doesn't really have any fingers on it on the end, but the idea is really to just, for the start, put some kind of magnet on there and have it rotate, so pick
Sure,
up
sure.
some stuff back and forth. Um,
So for those that don't know what the leap is, I mean, you're using that for the hand movements. I mean,
yeah,
you're just relaying through the cloud because you want more hell in your life to figure out why not just send it through the ether and back down again.
well, I've done enough with the Azure IoT space, and I wanted to have something that sends lots and lots of data through the
Sure,
AWS IoT space. So,
sure.
like anything, half the time we do some side projects just to learn some new tech. So,
Yep.
uh, but the leap motion does generate a ton of data. It's very accurate, like determines which finger you're doing, and you just kind of hold it like here.
Sure.
Uh, so it's a pretty cool piece of tech in itself.
All right, my turn. I have, and I won't be able to show it because I don't think that'll. Yeah, that will. Not enough light. So I got the um, Logitech Brio webcam, which is 4K, and while I work on two cinema displays or Thunderbolt displays, I don't really know the difference between the two of them. This webcam is pretty stinking incredible. I will say that it was a needed addition to the arsenal of things.
What's very interesting about that, so I've been doing a lot of research in that I just purchased a new DSLR and trying to look in and compare and say, okay, what does the space look like between DSLRs, mirrorless cameras,
Yeah.
and,
Oh yeah.
and, and webcams, and then even the fourth category of just like the handheld camcorders. And you start running into some interesting scenarios because like even the DSLRs that are several $1,000s usually have like a 20-minute max because they're recording
Yep.
at such high quality
Nope.
that you're.
That's not why.
Oh, really? What is it?
Nope. It's an EU regulation or some European regulation that says that you're not there some governmental thing, some
Interesting.
regulation, some governmental thing to stop you from recording longer, so that it can only be sold as a camera and not like a video camera or something.
Ah,
So it's completely arbitrary. It's totally crap. They all can do it, and if your camera supports the other firmware,
you can flash it.
I
Interesting.
forget the name of the firmware that you can flash like the Canons and whatnot on.
Wow,
You can get around that limit, but it's total garbage.
that's awesome. I learned something new today. And
But then you spend all this money on a camera and a gear, and you can do this, and then you can't even use it because of this stupid ass 30-minute limit.
right. Where I was going was that it's probably around $100 or maybe $200 for the 8K Logitech that you were able to get, and it, that's a heck of a lot cheaper, and it's going to more simply work with your computer, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
looking up DSLR and getting all of that through, like you could argue that can you really notice the difference if you're talking about stationary 8K coming off a webcam? Like if you're doing out in the field shooting, sure, you need a difference, but uh,
Yes. So I actually got my DSLR hooked up, and I got it working through my Mac. And my big problem, what led me to this Logitech, was the fact that I couldn't get the DSLR to. I couldn't get it in a place where it felt natural. Like obviously, that's mine sitting on a tripod back there, but it was like trying to maneuver this giant camera on. Like I wanted to just be able to do this. And now the depth of field is obviously better, but the clarity on this Logitech webcam is
it's
really
good.
solid. Like I'm super impressed. But
And
you mentioned DSLR. I did pick up because I was, well, and still will record um, video from my DSLR, and I picked up the Rode Link wireless lapel mic um,
nice.
for it, and so it clips to the top of your DSLR, and throw the other piece in your pocket, and you get a proper lapel mic.
So as part of my shopping, I did find that some of the DSLRs need like I forget the name. I want to say the word starts with a T, a special converter, because of the output that comes there, whether or not it's amplified or not. Yeah.
So if you look at this, I don't know. I'm not an audio person by any stretch, but my left, your right, is my like just headphone jack, and so that's stereo, left right with a mono mic. I think that's right. So you see the 3 bars on it. Get that center, but then you see the Rode is like a different pattern, right? So it doesn't. I don't know. I don't know if that's where like the converter comes in, just makes it different, like changes the pattern of the plug. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure if I'll have to get into one of that or not, but I was thinking of using, because what I could do is use the Zoom H6 that
Yeah.
I have sitting around not being used, which then has a direct input, but then I have to have the mic hooked up to that. For those that don't know, like the Zoom, they make a 4, a 5, and a 6, and those are like preprocessors, I believe is the right name, audio preprocessor, or maybe post processor. But basically, it's doing the recording to that rather than in the DSLR. But anyways,
I always thought they were like a nerdy taser where like lightning bolts would shoot out the ends of those condensing
they do kind of
microphones.
look like that, yeah, because they got the little cross mic. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you started popping off in an interview. I was going to stab you in the face with this thing and just.
So moving on, I've been doing a lot with mixed reality and HoloLens, and so my favorite mixed reality thing to develop with is the Acer, and primarily because it has a little flip thing. So if you're looking to invest or do anything on that, that little flip thing makes a weird noise, but I don't have to pull it on and off my head if I'm going to like switch back and forth from the code.
Oh,
Uh,
I thought that was just in case you were going to vomit. You could just flip it up real quick and barf all over the place.
so from the going around talking about mixed reality and HoloLens, like with HoloLens, you get to see through the thing, so you don't
Yeah.
get motion sick there. But from that perspective, the resolution on these things has gotten a lot better, and I find that actually helps me not get sick when I'm in mixed reality or virtual reality as much. And I used to think that it was more simply about not anything to do with resolution, but just the frame of reference in your head, like your body thinks you're sitting
Sure.
still, but you're going on a roller coaster.
Yeah, yeah.
And really, I've found that now I can go down a roller coaster or something, and it doesn't hit me as hard because the resolution is that much better. And
Okay, so how long have you been messing with this stuff?
quite a while. I've had a HoloLens since April, the first week that it was out, April 2016.
I'm
I've
gonna
had,
get I'm gonna get a little deep on you.
all right,
I know you got some issues with like vertigo and driving. You
yeah.
think you messed up your internal clock by wearing these gadgets on your face, and now
I
the real world, you can't fathom the real world anymore? Like you have to have these headsets on?
So this is a timely question with Ready Player One coming out this week, right? Where people meet in that environment. I've had that question come up, and the vertigo meds don't really help me too much with I forget the name, but I do have a thing for that from the doctor, and so yeah, it's a little interesting because it never hit me before. When I was younger, I'd go to Great America and I'd ride that thing that spun around and the floor dropped
Oh
out. I'd ride
yeah.
it 10 times straight. And I was always like the winner of the dizzy bat race. Like you spin around with your head on the bat and then
Yeah,
run.
can't do that either.
But now I can't. So maybe there's something to that, but
You rewired yourself.
it does. I think we need more study on the brain. I think I did something along those lines.
For any kids or adults watching, we take no responsibility for whatever gadgets you use and things that happen lifelong. That's your decision.
It's true.
I'm sure a lawyer would want me to say that somewhere.
So with speaking of what we just did and with mentioning Ready Player One coming out, it's interesting that there's a new kind of field that'll be coming up that we'll see essentially referred to as like maybe the AR cloud. And I find that fascinating because just like we have cloud providers now and there's, a handful of them, I fully envision within several years we'll have several cloud-based AR things that are essentially
Oh
mapped
yeah.
the world, kind of like the data set that Pokemon Go had used, but full 3D. And so we'll see people walking around with whatever device it is, HoloLens, Google Glass, Magic Leap, and you essentially can plug into these things so you can leave objects and interact with totally fake things that are sitting in the real world.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there'll be the haves that can see that stuff and then the have-nots that can't. And that's going to have some weird social implications.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not really sure where I was going with it other than that's a very interesting scenario to think about.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. All right. Gotta go back a little bit. You said you got a new DSLR. What's the DSLR?
so I went all out. I went with the Nikon D850, which,
I don't know the Nikon side that much, so
yeah, you're the Canon guy. So here I've just got a,
full frame or
it is a,
crop?
it is a full frame.
Wow, you
I've got
did go all out.
I've got a 50 millimeter lens, 1.4 on it.
Yeah.
So I can shoot very nicely in the dark.
No, but
And
you had Canon stuff before, didn't you?
nope, I had Nikon stuff. And so the thing that I had done was I had always bought full frame lenses, even though I was on a cropped sensor.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I upgraded the body just now, all
Sure.
of my lenses now,
Yeah.
I great benefit out of that. It is a little overwhelming. I mean, the book is over an inch thick, and the focal points went up from like 10 to like 150,
Oh
and
wow.
the different settings. So, um, I'm learning the ins and outs of that, and playing around, and taking a million pictures of my dog, in different settings.
Sure.
It's a
Sure.
lot of fun, but it's definitely an investment. I mean, I realize I paid more for that than like a laptop I would buy today.
Yeah. Yeah. I would certainly. I really enjoy the camera. I think I would love a full frame, but the cost is just it's up there.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm not even good enough with what I have now to like remotely justify the thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've done a lot of research to get over the last probably 4 or 5 years on just the lenses and understanding that, and
Yeah.
I feel like I maxed out what I could do with my Nikon calls the crop sensors, the DX, and they're not meant for high end pushing different things. And
Yeah.
part of what also got me along here is my niece and nephew really, the athletics that they're doing. My nephew also took a class in photography, so he's getting more interested in it. So
Yeah.
stuff that I can do there. So it's not like I'm just wasting the
Yep.
thing.
No, I know, and it's the sports thing where then you want the telephoto lens so that you can get a little bit closer to it because of course my kids decided to play a sport where there's a giant field and
Yeah.
even though you can get on the sidelines, it's still a giant field. So
Right. So I invested a couple years ago in a 300 millimeter, um, and with a 3.5 f-stop, it works pretty well. But it's considered one of those like all day lenses,
mm,
um, not one where like you're switching back and forth, but
yeah,
it works fairly well. Yeah, I mean, when you start getting into those specialized lenses, the lenses end up costing more than the camera, and
yeah, oh
that's
yeah, for sure.
crazy.
Um, let's see, let's see,
All right.
mine's
So
just a Canon D80, 80D, 80D, D80, 80D. I don't know, one of the two.
I think the 80.
I don't
It's
know.
funny. They have ones that start with D. Like the top of the line Nikon is a D5, and
It must be
yeah.
an 80D. 80D.
So I'm going to switch up topics here because I believe today is Tuesday, if I'm
Yep. Tuesday.
and so the latest Star Wars movie comes out for release today. So you can go and get that or download that, right? That
Oh
way
yeah, yeah, yeah.
days. Which I was surprised to hear. I don't ever try and follow spoilers and stuff. I always like to see those movies that I know I'm going to see without any spoilers. Just sit
Sure,
down, no trailer. And,
sure.
but
It's noble.
on the topic of Star Wars, um, I had
Yep.
bought BB-8 Sphero,
Yep.
which I did an event at down in Milwaukee for the launch of episode 7, and got on the news with this little guy. Anyways, it was pretty cool with the Sphero stuff, and communicates Bluetooth over the phone, so you can do a little bit of hacking there, and kind of come back and forth. As you can see, I just popped the guy's head, BB-8's head off because it's
Yep.
just magnetic. And then with the most recent Star Wars that just came out last December, I invested in the R2D2. And this guy is crazy cool because it actually makes the authentic noises of R2D2. And it does, when you turn it on and have it going around the floor, it actually does the tripod where like the base of this comes out.
Oh
So
yeah,
he's
yeah.
tripod and moves around and his head spins around and lights up. This is very cool. And it uses the same, it's from the same app. So the Sphero company doing that. And, it's probably not worth the $100 for like normal just play, but like from a Star Wars collector kind of thing, um, you know, I don't mind the investment. I can always just justify it if I remind myself about Keith, one of our other organizers, and his Batman stuff
Oh
collection.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Steve essentially has a shrine.
Yeah, life is certainly better if you. Let's see what else. I got a Stream Deck recently for this
I don't.
entire Ask That thing. Um, it is a programmable um, set of buttons that basically run macros, and it is contextual to like the program that's on.
That's pretty cool. So
So,
you can do it with like Illustrator as well or something, and
oh,
not just.
yep.
Nice.
So, like for this, it's easier for me to program all the scenes and things on here for when we live stream, and I can just flip around without. Granted, you can do some of it on the keyboard, but we seem to fumble up the keyboard. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Overblown IoT device. I mean, I don't
So
know that it's super complicated other than the LED buttons.
speaking of live stream, do we dare share our thoughts on delete Facebook movement?
Sure.
I find it pretty interesting because from several years ago, back when the rules that Facebook had in play for companies making apps, the default stuff that would be provided included things like the friends list and everything else. And so, for instance, when we first had the ability with that conference to allow somebody to log in, I couldn't go in there and say, no, I only want their email. Like it forced
Right.
us
Yeah,
to
yeah.
ignore. Now we never actually gathered any of that information, so we have nothing like that. But that meant that all of these games that you would play on Facebook and those quizzes and everything else have total unfederated access to that. And so Facebook is saying, hey, that was them, acting as a bad actor, the Cambridge Analytica. But I mean, they were allowing all that by default, and that just seems like that was where the breach of trust was in terms of not really making that clear to the users.
Sure. So I actually have a little bit of a different, like, I totally agree, but I have a bit of a different thought on this, and it's beyond Facebook. I think some of this is just the times that we're living in. Like there wasn't an internet before internet, and there wasn't a Facebook before Facebook, and there's not going to be, a thing before a thing. And so I don't necessarily know that and I don't want this to sound like I'm protecting Facebook because they have more resources than I certainly do. But I don't know that some of the questions that they're coming on could have been anticipated. Because at the scale and the things that they're doing, like how would you ever imagine? And Twitter's the same way. Like, could you ever, if you would have said 10 years ago, I'm going to use a social media platform to help game the election or the vote or some political system, you'd been like, who's going to buy ad? Like, you're going to buy an ad to do, like, that seems really like that's going to have that kind of impact. And yet, fast forward to this past weekend, and a set of high school students managed to organize the biggest rally in U.S. history in less than 5 weeks, and they did it all via their cell phones and social media and all that. So then you have to go back and say, like, that was amazing, and it's amazing what those kids are doing, but also that Facebook and all those things have helped enable that too. And so there's this like weird world we live in where some of it's going to be just figuring out like, oops,
So,
didn't need that.
so I would like to look at that from a technologist in a potential startup angle as well. And you bring back like the 10 years ago or the 15 years
Yeah.
ago, Zuckerberg was sitting there trying to essentially make an online yearbook.
Yeah.
And it was, probably more probably had something to do with dating or people getting to know each other as well.
Sure.
It's some people, right? And so when he's making that through in that initial idea, realize that now 12 to 15 years later, he's talking to U.S. government officials about campaign violations. Like, how on earth would you as a startup
Yep.
have that inclination? And
Totally.
Twitter is used to help oppressive regimes get taken down overseas. Like like, I'm sure they didn't have that
Yeah, not at
anticipation
all.
starting up either. Um, yeah,
Well, I heard something. This was a long time ago. This was actually back when I was at Microsoft. I don't know. We were rapping with somebody from Twitter, and they were talking about like uh, piracy and stalking, all that kind of stuff, and realizing that one of Twitter's like first biggest problems that they had come in was the fact that everybody started posting pictures, but the cameras had gotten so good, and they included all the geo information, and things would then be indexed, so it became their social responsibility to actually rip off the geo information that was coming because people were, I mean, myself included, I never even thought about it, right? Um, and it's man,
so
it's interesting.
to that point of them having some kind of social conscience as a
Yeah, that's a good
realizing
word
they're
for it.
more than a technology company. I want to make clear that I think it was in early 2016, since I had called out Facebook for providing all that other data. I think in early 2016 they changed it so that you didn't get all that access. And then Zuckerberg on his own blog post did come out and say, we're going to change it so the default is really first name, last name, and email. So they are taking steps moving forward.
Sure.
So they are socially aware in that regard. But it is interesting because I want to bring up another thing that violated stuff on that census. I forget the company who did it, but they released maps thinking that things were going to, I think it might have been a Fitbit, but it was some tracking company. But they released maps, and then it ended up disclosing like a U.S. base because the
Oh,
people
nice. We're
airport,
exercising.
yeah, were
Yeah.
exercising around, and that was like previously unmapped.
Yep.
It's just the forethought needed in that is very interesting and complex.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can't. And it's easy to get like super negative about some of that stuff and think like, oh, this is bullshit. I'm gonna delete my account and all that, and I don't want anybody like advertising to me, using my data to advertise to me. I have to be completely honest that I don't. Some of the ads in Facebook have actually gotten better over time for me, um, but Instagram has almost always been interesting. Like the ads in Instagram for me have been, I have not only gotten a few things and a few services out of it because of Instagram, but have bookmarked a pile of them, which has been really, really surprising.
Well, and
And they're the same. Like Facebook and Instagram's the same, but back when Google email, like Gmail came around, we were also worried about them like going through our email and the race of email, and all we're gonna do is get ads. Now I've never really seen the Google ads like be of anything that I really cared about, but the Instagram stuff has been surprising.
that I think at this point, technologists talking long enough will inevitably hit some point of a discussion of artificial intelligence. And so I'm just making that up, but the the point of all that data coming through, I mean, we're going to see, we should see those ads get better and better, more targeted. For instance, with me just buying a camera, so it was about a 2-month wait order on it
Yeah,
because it's a thing. But so I actually bought it on a couple sites, and I was waiting to see which one would
sure,
have it,
sure.
cancel it. But even though I made the actual purchase, I kept seeing ads on different sites
Oh yeah,
saying, "Hey, why don't you look at this camera?" And I'm like, "No, I bought that camera.
right.
You
Yeah,
should
there needs
be
to be a
advertising.
little check mark like, nope, I already got this one. Thanks.
Yeah, tell me about the accessories, right?"
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like, artificial intelligence is going to get there and help with that. And it is true to some regard that, well, to probably a bigger, larger regard, that we're the product in some of that. But it's not that. I don't like calling it just that we're the product, because there is a trade-off, right? We are getting that feature set, so we
Yep.
are getting benefit out of it. So it is more like a trade, right?
Oh,
Rather than
totally. Yep.
saying I'm just the product and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
um,
But then again, I don't have a problem with advertising. I think we're in this weird place where we're trying to figure out how advertising can be, and maybe this has always been the case, can be more um, like not just contextual based, but relevant, and relevant in a time and a place where attention is almost non-existent. And I get that it's how it fuels part of the economies, and there's a place where I do want to be marketed to, because I can't always. I want people to tell me, like, hey, like, I care about these things. Tell me what's interesting about these things, and um, but it's changing. Like, TV's changing.
that's where I'm going to go. So the digital disruption there, or evolution, revolution, is going to happen with TV. It might
It's
take.
already happening.
Right, but I mean, it hasn't stopped TV advertising,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
There's not a so like it might
Nope.
take the next generation to get there for the TV pull the plug kind of scenario. But why wouldn't you want personalized ads if you're going to be forced to watch those
That's
ads,
right.
like
Right.
for any live stuff, right? And that's going to have some major implications of, because it's not just the media delivery mechanism right now that a lot of the world looks at. It's also how all the businesses purchase to get that out there.
Yep.
So if I bring up like what we've done, I don't believe we're doing it this year, but we've done some advertising for that conference, and very little, but that had me showing that you can target some of that stuff, right?
Yeah. Yep.
On the platform.
I think
Um,
I think it's interesting to see where the YouTube, Instagram, all of that type advertising has changed. I think it's interesting to see platforms like YouTube and Musically and SoundCloud start to really put a dent in TV. Netflix included. I don't know. They certainly should be in there. I think we'll see some generational things where I'll say the old executive fogies who are kind of playing defense and only know how to do one thing will start to get, we'll see that generation get pushed out because they're not going to keep playing the same beat and everything else is changing. And
right.
it'll be interesting. Obviously, the TV is an important part of, I don't know,
It's
the living room.
but
Um,
so that moves the conversation a little bit to uh, innovation. Back to the camera sense, there is no reason whatsoever that Kodak, who had the market dominance,
Totally. Yep.
did not have enough
Yep.
researchers in the 80s to have been the premier DSLR. Somebody in there made an active decision to say, "Nah, we're good."
Yeah. Toys R
So
Us, same thing.
yeah, you know,
Radio Shack, Radio Shack, same
yeah,
thing. In a day of the maker, when this resurgence of making has come, and you already have that, you got your lunch eaten by some pop-up shops. And I'm not discounting Adafruit or anything. Like, you got your lunch eaten by
yeah,
some people who were just more creative. And
right.
no
Because
reason whatsoever. That didn't need to happen at all.
clearly Best Buy and Walmart are
Oh,
surviving well.
well, sort of. Like, Best Buy's like, our local Best Buy just closed the doors. I was I was quite surprised by that.
Interesting. I mean, I look at it from a holistic standpoint and say that they really haven't closed mass amounts of stores.
Oh, yep, not yet.
I
No.
can see more of a consolidation to some degree, but it's because they're doing the online presence as well. So they're taking the
Yep.
model of, like, Walmart takes it, you can order online and pick up or have it shipped to their store. Best Buy does it of like, you can come try it out. Like, it's almost more of like a, hey, we don't keep stock here. Like, in the long run, I could see it that way. But you can come see your TV or play with your
Yeah, yeah,
keyboard on your
yeah, yeah,
monitor first,
yeah.
as long as you buy from us. Like that's where some of that value is.
But then again, Walmart bought Jet because Jet is the closest thing to Amazon that there is going on. So
Yeah.
they're they're running too.
Yeah, that's very much true. But back on the Toys R Us front, that just means like the next generation of kids won't have that ability to like go into a store just for them of toys that like run
Right,
down the hall with that awe, like that
right,
awe.
right,
That
right.
is such a good memory that I have.
You can't tell me, and I love Amazon, but you can't tell me that you get that same childhood experience out of going to your internet browser and being like, "Ooh, this Lego set looks good." Like,
No.
I
It,
don't know.
it seemed like that Toys R Us store when I was a little kid could have been as big as like a football field, and I could run for days just surrounded
Sure,
by mountains of toys.
totally.
You know?
Yeah, I know. We were in one. It was probably I don't know, a year ago at this point, but and I can remember walking in and going, "Really, this is it?
Yeah,
There's just anarchy in here."
right.
But
But
yeah.
now it's like you go to a Target or something and there's one or two aisles of toys, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just nothing against Target; they're different market,
No,
but
but that's just what it is. Yeah,
yeah.
Meyer has a few.
All right, so one last topic I think I'll bring up here. So Target, I was a victim of their hack a couple years
Yep.
ago. Whatever, I bought my brother a PS4 and, for Christmas and got that. Well, so I don't want to dwell on the breaches there, but what I do find interesting is that I believe in April, from what I've read online, that Visa and MasterCard and Discover have all agreed that they will no longer require signatures on purchases. Now, it didn't go into why, but I would imagine it's a combination of things. Something with machine learning, AI on the back end. I would imagine it
Yeah.
also has to have the chip cards. But it's interesting to see like the death of that last human transactional piece, like where there was something specifically unique from
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I was present at that location because now it's more easily hackable. Even if it is a chip and a card and all that other stuff, there is no physical presence required.
I will say, as somebody who owns multiple businesses and has had, obviously for the conference we purchase a lot of things and it's all pretty much done through a credit card. Well, it's all done through a credit card. I have to give American Express their props because anytime, and this should be considered super freaky, but anytime something has been wrong, my phone has rang within seconds, and my card has been disabled. They have always been right. I've had at least four different corporate cards across companies, different company corporate cards. That's happened on all of them, and American Express right at the button has said something suspicious. I just want to double check. Yep, we'll have you a new card in the morning. Like, oh, okay. I'm not sure what just happened there, but okay.
It happens to me a couple times a year with different cards. I just do enough online, I guess, or whatever, or maybe traveling. But what I've learned is that they always say it'll take 10 days to get the replacement card,
Oh,
and I just say, well, that's unacceptable. Like I need that right away. And they will almost always just waive the expedited fee and get it to you within 2 or 3 days. So a tip to the users there, just complain and you get it right
I
away.
I've had my American Express card the next day, and if it was too late in the day, then it was one day following. But if they were to come to me and say, "Oh well, we can't get it for you a week," I'd be like, really? I'm the one giving, like, you're making 3% off of me. Like, no, it wasn't my fault. You just get that puppy to me as fast as you can.
Yep. Yep. But
Ah,
interesting to see how fast merchants may stop us from signing.
oh
So
yeah.
for our viewers to pay attention to that,
I,
see what's.
I will say I am the biggest fan of Apple Pay though.
Yeah, it's more secure.
And
Um,
and it is more secure, it is more convenient. I've used it from the watch. I use it from my phone all the time. Like it's fantastic.
And I don't want to just leave it for Apple Pay. It's the
Yeah, there's a Samsung one or whatever, but
but right.
who uses those devices?
That it will eventually add if a phone losing your phone isn't already enough of a stress inducer for people. By the time a few years from now your wallet is in your phone, even getting into your house is there. You get rid of your keys. Like it's got to add more and more things onto that one device. So.
Yeah, except you can go to your local web browser and just kill it, and then the phone's dead. So
True, yeah, but
didn't used to be that way. I remember back. I used to work at the old Ameritech Cellular, which is now Verizon. They got bought up by Verizon. God knows how many years ago. I can remember back in the clone. Remember the cloning of numbers? So
yep.
that had been like 96. Somewhere in 95, 96, somewhere in it. No, wait a minute.
It would
have been like 92, 93. I can remember guys walking in with vanilla envelopes and bills that were, double the size of this notebook. And they would be in tears, and their bill would be $6,000. And nobody at the time, like it was new. Now people that worked for the cellular companies had known, and we'd had guidance, whatever. And you would just look through these bills, and you were like, "Holy cow! Like what happened? Like the black market on selling phone numbers was just insane."
I hate the thing that reminds me of recently is not so much right now. There tends to be checks in the cloud, but there was a couple years there in the cloud, you could spin up something that was 40 grand for a month. And if you didn't know what you were doing, it was a big bill coming your way.
Well,
nowadays there's alerts and whatnot, but
when we owned Tangible, and we were hosting our sites, we were running the hosting business. We'd have like Bitcoin miners spin up a trial account and try to take us for everything that you could on a trial. And it would script against us and just go like trial, and just try to suck you dry on your what you could do.
Bitcoin conversation for another time.
Yeah. Well, blockchain's cool too.
Oh yeah, we'll have some sessions about that at that conference. So,
all right. Before we end this, though, let's go on the software side of things. What like software packages, tools, libraries? What's a couple new ones, whatever that you're using?
So one of the ones I like, I used it on a previous project, and I just found out today I'll be able to use it on project starting next week. Is Apollo to help with
GraphQL stuff? Yeah,
GraphQL. I used it on a React project previously, and next week we'll be starting up an Angular 5 project. For those that aren't aware, Angular 2/Angular 5. Will you be using it on that as well?
Yeah, Apollo's pretty hot. And it works really nice in React. All right, so I have been spending more time trying to get some of my JavaScript land of tools working. So I've been messing around with Wallaby and Coca. And I've had them before in the past, but I've never like really. I seem to be in Jest and Jasmine and Node and all that a lot. So there's plenty of unit test runners and all that, but Wallaby and Quokka are a really nice in editing runner experience to see what lines have run, not run, the output of them. And I was today writing a end-to-end like integration test. So Wallaby's sitting there like running, so you change the line or whatever, and it just kind of runs. And of course, I'm writing this integration test, and I knew what it was going to do, but since I was hitting like our dev environment, I fully expected that this thing was going to start pumping data through the system. And of course, I go over to the databases and it's like, because Wallaby's just been, recycling this shit to go get its metrics and whatnot. But it's really, I'm digging it.
From a more of a research side of things, I've been spending a lot of time with TensorFlow and CNTK, who kind of work, or they kind of can work together. Some overlap stuff for artificial intelligence. That is bringing me back to a lot of college type stuff, which has been a lot of fun. You researching anything new lately?
I have been in the React graph databases.
Nice.
That
You
stack of.
You loving the graph database stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say I'm pretty new to the graph database side of things. I really like this kind of call stack of React, GraphQL, Node.
For anyone not familiar, you want to explain the difference between a graph database and GraphQL?
Yeah, one's an actual database and the other's just about calling an API. They have nothing to do with one another.
But it's important to understand that. So
Yeah.
GraphQL you should think of as like an equivalent to doing like a REST. So you make a GraphQL API like a REST API.
Yeah.
And a graph database is something that you would use in I guess it falls under a NoSQL type approach.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. Well, I'll leave that for another time. I do like that stack. I over the weekend I was messing around with the Google Cloud and Travis CI and getting kind of the whole chain running and building and shipping and just trying to be done with that little section of life.
Speaking of that stuff, I echo the sentiment of I can't remember the blog post where like the state of the JavaScript dev that came out like mid last year. Having gone through a couple projects recently on that, just the amount of packaging and
it's a grind.
Yeah, it is. And I look forward to the HTTP 2 stuff.
Yeah.
Hello, that conference people have pointed me towards some good research on that, so I've been digging in there. That looks like it'll alleviate a lot of we need to bundle up this and worry about all these different calls, and that does make a bright future.
Yeah, I'm excited about Go too. I love JavaScript quite a bit, probably a little too much, but man, the grind is tiring. I mean, it's cool. It's cool to see it advance. It's cool some of the stuff you can do, but sometimes it's like, whew. God.
Well, it's like the other day. Every once in a while in Slack, we'll sit there and do the little code questions, right?
Oh, and yeah. We were doing on Friday night.
You're just like, what is this doing? And we all start trying to figure it out. It's like, it's JavaScript for you.
Well, and like to give a little context, right? It was Friday night, and one of the guys had asked, like, "Hey, this isn't quite running like I thought it would run." And I was like, "Well, what you're really doing is creating this," and it's like, "Oh, but then again, au contraire, you're also doing." It's like, "Oh, I missed that little piece." Well, why'd you wrap it in another function? Well, I couldn't get that to work. Well, there's some arguments that you could add on the end. Oh, I didn't even know that. Like, we went down the rat hole for a good hour of like, but what about this?
Yep. And it was literally five lines of code.
Right. It was. Yeah. There's a good site called Coding Wars, which I would encourage anybody to start getting involved with. All right. How about favorite tech item over like the past 6 months?
Yeah, physical or software or what?
Physical.
Physical.
Or we'll do one of both. No, I can't do that. We'll just stick to physical.
All right. So the one that I bought has to be I've transitioned my home network to Ubiquiti stuff, and I am more than pleasantly surprised with that for hardware.
Okay. So what all did you get? You got an access point.
I got an access point. Um,
You get the gateway deal.
yep, the gateway, the access point, and
Cloud key.
I got the cloud key, so I can manage that without
Yep.
software running, because otherwise the software has to run Java on the thing.
Yep.
And then, which Java's fine, I just don't want to have something running like that
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time. Then for my office here, I've got an 8-port power over Ethernet switch,
Yep. Yep.
so I
I
can plug
I
my stuff in.
literally just bought that setup for one of our clients.
Yeah, it's great, and the throughput I get and the monitoring is way better. So I'm
Yeah.
lucky in fiber connection where I live, and I really I get the benefit of that now compared to what I
Yeah.
was using.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, mine's not that expensive, but it's certain frivolous in the sense that I am super glued to these AirPods, and I have much better headphones by all means. I did not care for the wired version of these whatsoever. I don't know. They never really stayed in my ears. These AirPods, I I don't know what life was like before. I know it sounds so like first
No,
world problem, but they're so damn convenient. The only reason I'm wearing them now is so that, like there's not a audio loop back, because I actually have a microphone. Well, I can't quite get that up there. I actually have a microphone sitting in front of me, but how close can I get? Pretty close.
software in the last 6 months. Well, that's a tough one because I'm really liking some of the stuff that Unity is doing and I can do in the mixed reality side. But what I'm going to do is say VS Code in combination with .NET Core, because the last project that I just wrapped up and went live with 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, myself and 4 others were working on it with a React stack, with the .NET Core Web API, Cosmos database, and a SQL Server database, and Azure Functions. We all worked as a team for several months, 3 or 4 months, only doing it on Windows. And I took a week in the middle of February and booted straight to Mac and said, okay, let's see what I can do, what hiccups I'm going to do. I ran into one thing, and it was a 5-minute fix with regards to a time zone lookup, because that's a OS specific thing. So I just
Sure.
put in a conditional check. So I was very impressed. I know it's not quite software, but as far as like, VS Code being cross-platform
Yeah.
along with .NET Core, I did not expect it to just that large of an app to just build and work. I was impressed.
I will say the early days of VS Code were pretty brutal on a Mac. There was way too many Microsoft isms that came through that didn't make sense on a Mac. Didn't make sense in that environment. They've really done a good job of cleaning that up. I use it daily. I was a Sublime and then Atom user, and I still dig on Vim, but
I
there's
use,
it's
I use the VI key bindings in VS Code.
yeah it's I give it to him. It's pretty good. Um, I have been a sucker lately for tools and services that just basically help me do my job. So like Calendarly, nice little service that I can let people jump on my calendar. I don't have to do like the email exchange back and forth. It automatically puts it on my calendar. I don't have to just don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Text expander, nice little service that I can pre-write stuff and have shortcuts, macros that plop in stuff.
Pretty.
Oh well, yeah, Prettier is my jam. I can't live without Prettier. That's ESLint. So a linter in Prettier, like I don't understand. I cannot fathom how much it's just. I have these conversations with people, and it's like, why do you waste any energy? Like, here's a format, here's a thing that works. It does it for you. Who cares? Let's move on and let's stop talking about it.
So I agree, and I've come to that same conclusion years ago. However, I can remember in the late 90s, early noughts, back then I was doing C++, a variety of different languages. And I remember having a lot of conversations on what's the right format. Like, we need to have a style sheet for this project and stuff. And, I must say that I'm very happy that those kind of conversations tend to have gone the way of the dodo, where it's more or less like, just use the format, the normal idiom for that language, and move on.
I am with you. I can't tell you the amount of hours lost where people are barking over where there should be a space. And I get the importance of being consistent, but I look at something like Prettier, and it's like save and reformat. And not only do I save keystrokes because it's like, oh, I know that line is wrong. Like, I completely don't care, but I know it'll fix it. Like, it's close enough, and it'll do the rest of my job for me.
And that, and even to the point of like, everyone knows tabs versus spaces and stuff, and it's like, okay, well, a lot of people may be going and writing C#, and C# tends to have curly brackets on a new line, and JavaScript tends to leave the opening curly bracket on the end of the function. I don't care. Like, I gave up caring about that so long ago that like it just use what that de facto is, like the accept large de facto. But yeah,
I agree. All right. Well,
we could keep talking for another few hours.
I was gonna say we're already way over, and I think leaving it at tabs and spaces is probably a good place. But like everybody that I have on, and just because we're buddies and whatever, just you're not excluded from this, I do extend a bit of acknowledgement or gratitude at the end. And so with that being said, Mr. Twelvehagen, I would like to acknowledge you for the time that you've spent over the past 5-10 years in community, not just as part of that conference, but also slinging the code camps on the side, both in Milwaukee and Appleton and everywhere else. And thank you for being part of it, and thank you for being on our crazy ass team of that conference. So I appreciate it.
So I've watched a few of these, and it rightfully so. People say thank you back, and so I want to get that sentiment there, and I want to remember back to when I was first starting out a user group here where I live in Appleton. And Clark came up when he was working for Microsoft, made a 3-hour drive and meet each other out at a bar, and we're starting talking about a variety of different things we could do for the community. And looking back, that I think that was probably like 05 or 07, I don't know what, one of those years.
At least back then, yeah.
And because like say the code camp up here, I think it's been 12 years now or something. And it's very interesting to think of where we came from that, and appreciate the help you've provided along the way. So it's not just
thank you.
It's been a long time, so thank you.
We've been doing this grind for well over a decade, and to see people always want something to happen fast, but here's the reality: like, people don't see that this has been a 365-day a year thing for the past 10 plus years, and it's had its ups and downs, but it's doing. There was a time where people thought of the Midwest as nothing.
That's right.
I know, because I was told.
And they were wrong.
I'm going to keep all other comments for a day when we have beers in hand. All right. That was a random show about random stuff. We'll leave a bunch of links down in the show notes. That'll take me a little while. I was writing them down when we were talking about some of the stuff. Greg, for the people, how do they find you?
Most stuff is using my name online, so greglevenhagen.me and .com, at Greg Levenhagen on Twitter, and I think LinkedIn / Greg Levenhagen, whatever. So you can find me at Code Camps in Northeast Wisconsin and Milwaukee, as well as that conference. So hope to see you around.
All right. With that, that has been another edition of Ask That. And while we were just riffing back and forth and having a conversation, which is pretty natural to what we do anyways, and I'm sure Greg is as well, I'm super curious what tech that you are digging on. Why don't you leave a comment below? Let us know what's helped save you some time, what software you think is awesome. Maybe it's a service, maybe it's tech, maybe you just want to say hi. Drop it in the comments, and let's riff a little there. Give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, share with your friends. Our marketing team is, we don't have one, and so that's just kind of what it is. Greg, thanks for today. I know it was all last minute, and probably should have turned the lights on about halfway through this, but I'm sure the editors will clean it up.
That's right.
Not. All right, we'll see you.